Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you all for being here. I've been excited to share this topic with you. I've learned a lot about it. And so, personality traits and how they can contribute to chronic illness and chronic symptoms. The first time I came across this was when I read Dr. Sarno's book. Not sure that you'll be able to see it. Mind Body Prescription, if anybody's read that. There's a section in there on personality traits. Now, Dr. Sarno was really, I'm going to read a little bit of it for you in a second, but he was one of the first ones because he'd been focused on this, working with people with these mind body syndrome conditions. He started to see patterns over a long period of time. This was 30, 40 years of seeing patients all the time. He started to notice there were certain personality patterns that people were exhibiting who were suffering with these conditions. And he wrote about it. It was very controversial at the time. It's still controversial now. I often see it in groups when that subject pops up. People get a little bit upset about it, do you
Mm.
know? And I
Mhm.
can understand why. And one of these beliefs people have about personality traits is, well, I was born with it. I can't do anything about it. Now, who believes that? Who thinks that we're born with our personality traits and there's nothing we can do about it? Anyone? Amy? How are you feeling about that? Maybe Amy's not there.
When your
Okay.
parent tells you uh, when you're young that you're sensitive,
Uh-huh.
so you grow up
Yes.
knowing that you're different to your siblings because they're all rough and tumble and you aren't, and so you kind of you
So the
behave different around them because you aren't one
yes.
of them, and then they tell you things like you're a bit different because you've got a lazy eye, um, and well,
Mm,
yeah, and then, oh, well, your mum and dad weren't together when you were born. So you kind of then feel a little bit not part of the group, and that you're sensitive maybe because you've got a lazy eye, or, you know,
right, right,
you're
right.
just isolated because you think a bit more deeply and you're different
Mm-hmm.
somehow.
Yeah.
And you think, well, I
Yes.
just have to be that way and know that I'm that way. And you kind of have
Mm-hmm.
a mark on you that you're not
Yeah.
taken seriously, that your feelings
Yeah.
are never taken seriously because you're too
Yes.
sensitive.
Mm-hmm. And then have you noticed that as you've grown up and all throughout your life, you've had that kind of label that you carry?
Yeah,
Oh,
yes, I guess
I'm sensitive.
yeah, I guess I overreacted too because you grow up in that environment and you know that some things aren't right and they go
Yes.
against your personal integrity, and the bully in the
Yes.
family gets more notice and you're trying to be the smart kid at school to get the notice, you know.
Yes. Mm,
But
yeah.
it,
So
it
all of
yeah.
that shapes who you are, doesn't it? You know how we how we are in that in our family setting. Our
Mm,
first environment is our family setting, and that's where we learn who we are.
mm,
Who am I in the world? For you, it was sensitive.
mm.
um who am I, who are others to me? They treat me like this, people treat me like this. Who am I in the world? This is all formed in those first years, and that's where our personality traits come from. So these are the ones that Dr. Sarno first coined: low self-esteem, the perfectionist. This is the one that I constantly see in my work, the perfectionist. Goodism, hands up.
Mm.
That's me, goodism.
Mm.
Hostility and aggression. You'll meet people who that seems to be their nature, to be quite hostile and aggressive. Guilt. This is often the poor me person. Dependency is the next one. So that's Dr. Sarno's. And I'll just read you here a little bit what he says in his book about how he came up with these personality traits after seeing it repetitively in people. And he talks about these repressed feelings, which are underneath all of the personality traits. Underneath it is these repressed emotions. And the the emotion that seems to underpin all of them is shame, deep shame. So possibly, Naya, when you were told you were sensitive, there'd be some shame underneath that. My people pleasing goodist, there's definitely some shame, underneath that. So what he says here is deeply repressed feelings of inadequacy foster the development of personality traits that are almost universal in people with mind-body syndromes. These tend to be the perfectionist, the compulsive, highly conscientious and ambitious people. They are driven, self-critical, and generally successful. Parallel this with these traits, and sometimes more prominent, is the compulsion to please, to
Mm-hmm.
be the good person, to be helpful, non-confrontational. That's me.
That's me.
In short, people with mind-body syndromes have a strong need to seek approval, whether it's love, admiration, or respect. And then he goes on to say there's nothing wrong with these. It's just what happens to us. It happens in our family, it happens in society, but they have negative consequences, these personality traits. Now, everyone has them to a degree, but when it becomes a problem, like for me being the goodist and the people pleaser, I was self-sacrificing. I was wanting to please everybody else and not listening to what my needs were and suppressing those emotions so that I wouldn't be confrontational. And of course, underneath all of the personality traits, and I'll share with you Dr. Schubner's in a minute, but underneath all these personality traits is just the need to be loved, the desire to feel loved and accepted by those primary caregivers that we have, because they're our survival. Everything is pinned on them loving us, which means they'll take care of us and look after us. They won't abandon us, right? So underneath all of these. Now, what I thought was really fascinating is how is it that so we're all born and we're all living in different families. How is it that one becomes the goodest? And even in one family, you might have someone who's the perfectionist, someone who's the goodist, someone who's the aggressive one, someone who's the guilt-ridden one. You can have all of those in one family. Now, how does that happen? Right? Now, each one of us here Nair, I think you were nodding that you're probably fit in the people-pleasing goodist
Mm.
personality
Yeah,
trait.
perfect
Is there
child.
anyone
Mm.
else? Is there anybody else here who recognizes themselves in any of the others? The low self-esteem? Anyone here the perfectionist? I know they're out there. They're just not here today.
Mm.
So how does this happen, right? And all in one family, you can get these different personality traits, and that's why often you have clashes with siblings. They just can't relate to each other because you've got the perfectionist, and you've got the goodist. They don't do too well together. They'll clash, right? So this is what Dr. Schubner, he talks also about these personality traits. And again, between them, 60, 70 years of working with people and recognizing these personality traits underpinning, you know, most people who are suffering from mind body conditions. So he also, of course, has low self esteem, being the perfectionist, having high expectations of yourself, wanting to be good and liked, frequently feeling guilty, dependent on others, conscientious, hard on yourself, overly responsible, difficulty making decisions, must follow rules strictly,
Mm.
difficulty letting go, cautious, shy, reserved, tending to hold on to thoughts and feelings, tending to harbour rage or resentment, not standing up for yourself or express your true feelings. So that's his list there, which I will share with all of you. So yeah, there's a lot there, isn't there? And we can tick a lot of those boxes. And when I look back now, definitely played a big part in in my getting ill. And mostly it was my personality trait, the people pleaser, the goodist, is I was suppressing my emotions mostly as I was doing that. And I've worked with a lot of perfectionists. And once we start unpacking that, I find the same thing with them, that they suppress all their emotions to be that responsible, conscientious, driven person, putting all this pressure on themselves constantly, that they are suppressing their emotions as well. So, underneath all of these personality traits, that's what's happening. Okay.
Is that for a need
Now,
for control? Do you think?
yes, definitely. That's
Mm.
the perfectionist, the need for control. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So, each one of these personality traits, underneath them, there will be, certain ways of behavior, certain ways of thinking, certain ways of expressing. Okay. Now, the good news is that it can all be changed. People think that once I have a personality, I'm locked in there. That's who I am, and I can't do anything about it. But we know different now, especially if it's hindering your recovery, if it's getting in the way of your recovery, that you continue to be overly responsible, that you continue to be hard on yourself. You notice these traits about yourself, they can all be changed because they are just neural pathways in the brain, our personality traits. They've been learned. They are programs, they are conditioning, and they can be unlearned. Okay, I've done that. I'm proof of that. I remember when I was probably 24, 25 years old. I'd had my oldest son, and I was at my mother in law's, and she said to me quite bluntly, Lolita, you try too hard. Now, at the time, I didn't really understand what she meant. I was just being a first time mother. I was trying to do the best that I could with this baby. Had no real role modeling. What that entails, I was going completely by my instinct. No mother from the age of 2, so no real role models. What I do here, not a real lot of books around at that time, and the books
Mhm.
that were around, I wasn't really very fond of. How
No.
this is how you raise children. So, and he'll be nearly 50 soon. So it was a long time ago. Things
Mm.
have advanced a lot since then. We know a lot more about raising children since then. But when she said that to me, and I didn't really think much about it until I started training with Dr. Schubner and learning about these personality traits and how they impact us. And absolutely, I was trying really hard, which meant being the goodest, to feel accepted and to be loved. And when I trace that back, I go, yeah, that's what I was when I started nursing. I was the goodest there. I was just trying hard all the time. Um, at school, absolutely. I had to try extra hard at school because English was my second language,
Mm.
right? And I was living in a different culture. I was the only colored
Oh.
person in my whole community. So
Mm.
that pattern was there from very young, and I followed it all the way back through. And you can do this with your personality traits too, when you identify what that might be. And they can overlap as well. They can definitely overlap. You can be a bit of low and a bit of the goodest as well. Some of them can overlap. So what I did was I traced it right back, went right back to my earliest childhood. And I thought to myself, of course you had to be the goodest, Lolita. Of course you had to be liked because, from 2 years old, I was plonked into this other family who already had a bunch of kids, and I had to fit in with them to be accepted. Otherwise, they might kick me out. I didn't know that at the time. I didn't feel that at the time. But when I look back now to my
Mm.
younger self and I see my younger self back there in that family, of course, that's what a child would have had to do to fit in, to belong, right? So if you can do that, if you can trace it all the way back, you've got something powerful to work with, because then guess what you have? Memories, right? And that's how we change neural pathways. We change memories to change neural pathways. So if I want to stop being this goodist and this people pleaser and have people walk all over me all the time, I'm no longer going to be a doormat. Thank you very much. You know, I can say no now finally. No, I can't do that today. I'm sorry, I've got something else going on. I never could say that before. My desire to be loved, to be wanted, to be accepted, to be needed. Wow. That was huge. And when I got sick, suddenly I was none of those things to anybody because I was in bed,
Mm.
right? So I couldn't say yes to anybody. I couldn't please anybody. I couldn't be good anymore. I was miserable. I was absolutely miserable because I couldn't be that person anymore. So are they going to stop loving me? Are they going to kick me out? Are they going to walk out on me? Are they going to leave me? Like I remember going to a conference very early on in my diagnosis with people with chronic illnesses, and someone stood up there and they said, 70% of women 70% of women who have a diagnosed with a chronic illness end up their partners leaving them. Right? They're not loved anymore because they have this illness. They're not who they were anymore. I'm sure, I'm positive that my partner was attracted to me because I was this person. I was going to be the goodist. I was going to be pleasing him all the time. I was going to, um, override my needs and be just pleasing him and the children all the time. I'm pretty sure that was one of the reasons why he was attracted to me. And then here I was no longer that person, right? So what was going to happen? Is he going to leave me? That was in the back of my mind all the time. I think he's going to leave me, especially after that conference. And then what's going to happen to me? I'm going to be abandoned, and he's probably going to take the children with him because I can't look after them anymore. These were my dreading thoughts, right? And it was based a lot on my personality, that I couldn't be that person anymore. So our personality also becomes our identity. So Naya, the sensitive one, it can become part of our identity, who we are. Okay. So the good thing is, yes, we can change it. Our brain is neuroplastic, even with our personality traits. Okay. So you weren't born a perfectionist. For those of you who are perfectionists out there, and that's what I mostly see in my practice, the perfectionist personality and the low esteem personality. So at the moment, I'm working with a client with incredibly low self esteem. He has immense social anxiety because of his low self esteem. He's constantly criticizing himself, judging himself, being really hard on himself. Um, Low self esteem can also um, close your world down, make your world very small, because it's scary for you to go out into the world when you have this lowest self esteem. If you're walking in your community with this low self esteem, that's dangerous, right? So that's the other thing with all these personality traits. Underlying is that danger alert, the going on in the brain. Okay. So if you're being the goodist all the time and suppressing your emotions because you need to be this goodest person to feel loved, your brain's going to be continually beeping, right? Danger, danger, dysregulating, hyperprotective brain, hypersensitive brain. Okay. So this person, you know, presents with this very low self-esteem personality traits. He can't have one-on-one conversations with people. He freaks out, has panic if he's in a group with other people, because that's even worse, right? Can you imagine a gang of people who you think in your mind that are going to hurt you, destroy you because you're not a good person? Um, Really, really, really difficult for this person to live in the world. And he's now, in his 60s. He's lived a long life and he's been like that all his life. Now, when we're born and we're babies, do you think he was lying there with low self esteem as a baby? Do you think he was lying there going, being really hard on himself in his thoughts? Oh, I'm not a good baby, they won't like me. No, it wasn't happening. And just like with me being the goodest, do you think I was lying there as a baby going, they won't love me if I'm not really well behaved? No, I'm not as a baby. I'm just wanting to have my needs met. Feed me, please. Change my nappy, please. Do you think that baby is lying there being a perfectionist? Do you think that baby's there thinking, you didn't do my nappy up properly, it needs to be a little bit tighter? Or that milk that you gave me isn't warm enough? Or, anything else that perfectionists do? No. They're just lying there wanting to be fed, wanting to be hugged, wanting to be loved, wanting to feel safe. But somewhere along the line, as we're growing up, like for him, he started being criticized by his family, particularly by his father, constantly judged, criticized, put down, never feeling like he was good enough. And so slowly, 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 his self-esteem was eroded. Okay. All throughout school, he wasn't even able to hold down a job for very long. He tried and tried and tried all throughout his life, never had a relationship because of this personality trait, which was stemming from his childhood and his need to suppress his emotions, never being able to stand up for himself to his father, to his siblings, to his parents. But guess what? Now we're working together and working on all those memories and him practicing building his self-esteem. His self-talk is better. He doesn't hear himself constantly beating himself up and being really nasty to himself, right? He's not doing that anymore. And when he does, he catches himself out and he uses the tools that I've been teaching him. So slowly, 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 he's changing his personality trait. Now, he sent me a gorgeous message the other day and he said, I sat in my group in a circle for an hour and a half. I stayed there, I listened, every now and then I said something. Now, that's a totally different person. That's not a person who would have even sat in that circle before. He wouldn't have dared sit in that circle. He used to just take himself off and sit in the corner and hardly look at anybody and barely ever say anything. He said if someone came up to him, he would be lucky to get two or three words out of his mouth. Oh, I'm well, thank you. How are you? And then he'd walk away. Right? That's how low his self-esteem was. So that's really the message that I wanted to share with you today is that your personality trait is not locked in. You're not stuck with it and you can change it, right?
I
By
married that guy.
changing your memories.
I married that guy, Lolita.
Did you? The low self-esteem one?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He kept a job, but he had to work for his father, and he was
Mm.
exactly as you described.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm. And low self-esteem people and goodist people, they attract each other,
Absolutely.
right? Because
Mm.
the gooders can see the good in that person with
Hmm.
the low self-esteem and they can help that person balance out a little bit. They don't
Yeah.
feel so bad about themselves.
Mm.
And the people pleaser person, the goodest person, is not going to be judging them and criticizing them as harshly as they were judged and criticized by
Mm.
their loved ones, by their
Mm.
caregivers.
Mm.
So low self-esteem are very much attracted to the goodest, and the goodest is often attracted to the low self-esteem people because they think that they can help them
That's right.
unconsciously.
Mm.
And I hear this a lot from people. Oh, I think I married that person. I think I fell in love with that person because I thought I could fix them.
Mm.
And then I realized I couldn't.
Mm.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe
So,
because we couldn't we were trained not to feel our own emotions. So it was easy for us to escape ourselves into helping someone
Yes,
else so we didn't have to feel our own feelings.
that's right. That's
Mm,
right. Very much so. And that's me again. I'm the goodist. I married a person with very low self-esteem,
mm,
incredibly low
mm.
self-esteem. So I know all those
So
traits.
then that you're already being a gooder, and then their behaviour can go feral because they get on the booze, and you're trying to uphold more and more and more the children, the home, all the responsibility, and then
Yes.
you are overwhelmed beyond your
Yeah,
capacity.
because you're suppressing your emotions even more
Yeah.
because you've got
What?
this big load
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
carry,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Is there anyone else that would like to share? Can you relate to some of this? Does it make sense to you?
I've been chiming in the chat, so I've been saying like, yeah, a lot of this is stuff that I have heard. And a lot of this was some of the things that kind of helped me to make sense of what I was dealing with and where some of the roots of these tendencies I had, these behaviors came from. Because for a long time,
Yes.
like you said, I thought it was just inherent, like, oh, this is just how I am. But the more I've
Mm,
reflected, like you said, on the memories that I do have, because I know there's some memories that I just don't have because, that's the way trauma works sometimes, where there's just these gaps. But the ones that I do have are often quite telling. And I know even I've shared some of them in these Zooms before, but just certain things that I'm like, oh, I see how a whole framework of how I operate in the world came about
yes.
just from this one moment or from these couple moments that are really similar to one another, that
Yes.
happen throughout the course of time. And so it's just
Mm,
that's been a very, very key and helpful in my journey to start to unravel why I do what I do. But like I said in the chat, also learning to address it with grace and not starting to obsess over, well, obsessing over every little thing I do. Like just learning
yeah.
to also be graceful with myself. Like, okay, yeah, I see that I'm still doing this tendency and I see where it
Yes.
came from. I don't have to judge myself because of it. All I can do now is choose differently as I have the revelation and as I have the understanding that I have in the moment. Because some things you don't realize till after the fact. And that was one thing I realized
Exactly. Yeah.
was one of my things. I was such a goodist and such a people pleaser and different things. So like I didn't really recognize red flags when they would come in relationships.
Mm,
Not so much romantic because I haven't had like boyfriends or anything like that, but more like
mhm.
person to person peer relationships, but also then, even with, people who were supposed to be my leaders and just different things that I've been able to go back now in hindsight and be like, oh, I see why I missed this red flag because I'm such a goodist. I
Yes.
see the good in everyone and I want
Yes.
to believe the best about everyone. And even
Yes.
though I do believe the best about everyone, it doesn't make doesn't make everything that everyone does right.
That's
So
right.
I've had to learn to hold the balance of the two. Like, okay, yes, you can still see the good in this person, but don't
Mm,
negate the obvious flags or the flags that you learned later. Because sometimes you don't know it in the moment, and that's okay. We're all humans. We
yes.
don't have
Yes.
fine insight on every little thing. But so that was really
Yes.
helpful for me to learn. I think I started learning this about a year or so ago.
Okay.
Maybe a little more than
Wonderful. Yeah. Yeah. And have you heard, because you said you've heard um, a lot of this before, have you heard that part where you can change your personality by changing your memories?
not about memory specifically. I have heard people talk about it, which I think is kind of just a different way to say the same thing. Like you can change your habits by changing your story around the memory, or as I say around, but your story that
Mm,
you're making in your head about your personality is how I've kind of
yeah.
heard it.
Yeah.
And
So
specifically,
habits are a bit different, totally different thing, and we're going to do a session on habits. But personality is really quite specific. Yeah. And it sounds like you use a lot of um, soothing, comforting self-talk, Desiree, to do with a lot of your um, awareness. You know, you're aware of certain parts of your personality and how it's not helpful, and you're using the self-talk, sounds like, which is really wonderful, really wonderful. Anyone else?
Uh,
We
I
have any?
I had an issue about 2 weeks ago now where I'm on a committee at the community garden, and there's a guy there who has the most dysregulated, aggressive, hostile personality. Uh, he's upset a lot of the women,
Yes.
and I had to sit there in this meeting, and I wouldn't have been able to do it before. So some part of me is regulated, and I had to
Good.
say what I felt and not worry about what his response was going to be, because I
Yeah. Yes.
wanted to say what was right, like bylaws.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and after it was all over, he was yelling at me, and
Mm.
I got out to the car, and someone came forward and said the same thing as me. Oh my God, that guy. Two people. And I was kind of shaking. I
They
was,
validated you, right? They
yes,
validated you. Yeah. You're not
yep,
alone,
I'm
Naya.
not
Yes.
alone. And my driver came to get me, my new lovely Fijian guy upstairs, and he's only 29, but I've been teaching him orienting, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so he's teaching me. So he says, we're here now
Lovely.
in this beautiful environment, and we're not going to let
Yes.
this person
Bringing you
upset.
back to the present.
Before
Yes.
he got me in the car, and
Yes.
it felt so good. And I
Yes.
then had the courage to write a letter to the president and say, I don't need to be on this committee because I don't
Mm.
need this level of torture and abuse. And that
Oh,
took a lot of courage, because
Bali. Yes. Yes.
I am not going to put, my health is not worth being there
Good.
surrounded by this man's aggression.
Good. Good. That's wonderful that you did all of that. And I would encourage you to also journal about it,
Okay.
right? Get it all out, what you couldn't say to him. Imagine you are saying what you really want to say to him in
Okay.
in and really try and complete that, because this is the other thing that happens with personality traits is we will be triggered by others' personality traits.
Mm,
Okay. I'm triggered by perfectionists, right? I'm often triggered by them, and so you get good at recognizing these personality traits in others, like you did there with this man. He is hostile and aggressive. That's his personality trait, and use some of the tools to help you when you are triggered to deal with that, so that you're not so activated. Okay, that's the other really good thing about understanding the personality traits, because you look at all your family, you'll see it there. You
mm,
look around at your friends, you'll see them there, the different ones. And when you get really good at it and understand them, you can pick them very easily. Oh, that person has terrible low self-esteem.
mm,
They're always
mm,
saying terrible things
mm,
about themselves. And um, and how does that trigger you? So we want to look at, how does it trigger me? And like you did, Naya, you know, you've made some adjustments now. You won't sit there and just take it now. You will stand up for yourself, and that's huge for a people pleaser and a goodist. Um, and then keep making those adjustments as you are being triggered.
uh,
Okay,
the
and it
pre-
helps you to have more empathy,
yeah.
I believe, in
Mm,
people as well, because you can then understand, oh, I get really curious. I go, I wonder if that person's aggressive and hostile because they grew up with someone in their life who
Mm.
was aggressive and hostile. Or maybe someone was, really aggressive and hostile to him as he was growing up. And so now he thinks he has to be this way. Because remember, all the personality traits are there to protect us. Right? They're protecting us in some way, whether it's the need for love, the need for acceptance, the need to belong, the need to fit in, that I matter and that I'm important. These are all basic human needs that we all need. And we start adapting from a very early age to where we need to fit in. Now, Desiree said something earlier. Some of it, I believe, is inherent. Some of it does come through because, like people have said to me, even though I don't know my mother at all, I don't know anything about my mother, but occasionally someone would say to me, your mother was like that. Your mother was a very kind, loving, compassionate person. And I see that in you. So some things are inherent, even if we don't know. There'll be family traits that we've inherited. We'll be super conscientious like grandfather was. Do you know? We will be um, the hardworking person will be conscientious, will be recently I had stoic is another one. I'm surprised that that's not in either of these lists
Mm.
because that's something that I see quite a lot.
Mm.
People who are very stoic. Do you know what that means? So this person I recently spoke with is English. What do we know about the English in general? And also we see throughout cultures these personality traits. I grew up thinking, Italians, they didn't suppress their emotions. Their hands are going and they're all talking over each other and they're saying what they want to say. I remember when I was nursing, when I look back now, quite a bit of what I learned from nursing. Um, I remember this Italian man, and I was just learning how to give somebody a needle, right? And you practice and you practice and you practice in an orange, how to give a needle as gently as you can. And one of my first patients is this big Italian man. And he starts crying as soon as I come into the room with this needle. I'm like, what the heck? I've never seen a man like this before. I've grown up with, three strong men in my household. And here's this. And then someone said to me, oh, don't you know, Italians are like this. They express all their emotions. So we learn these things, about certain cultures, how they are. English, stiff upper lip. The stiff upper lip, don't we all know that?
Mm.
So I'm talking to this woman and she's describing to me, a grief. She's just been told that her grandchildren's father has just died. He's only 29 years old and he suddenly died. And she has to tell her daughter and she has to tell her grandchildren. Guess how she approaches that? Stoic, you know. I'll be the rock. I'll be strong. I'll be tough. I'm not going to let them see that I'm upset because if they see me crying and upset and about this horrendous news that anybody would be, right, distraught by it, and she's got to tell her grandchildren, but she didn't show a thing, not one emotion, because she had to be strong for her daughter and her grandchildren. Now, as she was telling me this was a couple of months ago, as she was telling me this, then she broke down.
Mm.
Then she cried. Then she let her emotions be there because she felt safe to
Mm.
share them, that I was going to listen to, that I understood. And she actually used that word, stoic. Now, I had to be stoic. And guess how her daughter responded?
Stoic.
Stoic.
Mm.
She was the same, showed no emotion at all. The wife of this 29-year-old man who just died, two young children, and huge debt, right? She was stoic. So we can pass on these personality traits as well, right? We can pass them on to our children. So really worth addressing, worth exploring, worth like Desiree, Naya, and I hope you others are as well. Get curious about it. Right? There was another thing I wanted to share with you when I was nursing. I was thinking about as I was preparing this. I was very young. I was only 17, 18 when I started nursing. I didn't know anything really, didn't know much at all. I was already an orphan. I was 15, I was an orphan. I was out there in the world scared and lost and afraid and what the heck, how am I going to live in this world? And someone was very, very kind and helped me, to navigate that. But when I was nursing, I noticed most of the people that I was nursing were just beautiful souls. They were the most gorgeous, loving people. And I remember this woman in particular, very young, beautiful looking, just so kind, to all the nurses and everybody that was in the ward. A beautiful human being. She was in the final stages of cancer. And my brain couldn't make any sense of that. I'm like, how can this happen to somebody like this, who's this beautiful human being? And I started to see that. And I was asking other nurses and I was asking our trainers, but nobody really knew. Nobody knew. How can these people, and Dr. Sarno writes about that in his book. He says the people who are the most loving, the most kind, he said, Dr. Shubin has said this, he said, you don't see narcissists turn up with chronic pain and chronic symptoms, right? You don't
Mm.
see people who are extremely selfish end up with these illnesses. You see the kind ones, you see the loving ones, you see the ones who self-sacrifice, who want to do good in the world. We are the ones who get sick, okay? And that's because we're suppressing our emotions. We've learned from a very early age that we've got to be good in the world to be loved, right? So,
I read in the Guardian newspaper this week that 4 out of 5 people with autoimmune conditions, 4 out of 5 are women and only
women,
1 are men.
yes.
So that correlates
And
with Gabor Mate said.
what do you think is happening? Why do you think that's happening?
Uh, women suppressing their needs. They've got families to run. They've got
Women are the
husbands to offer.
caregivers.
They're the
Yes.
caregivers and they suppress their
Mm,
own needs.
yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right. But we do live longer.
Yeah, but why? I don't know
We
why.
do live longer. So that's good, isn't it?
Mm.
Okay, so any questions, anything that I can help you with on this topic, and how it can get in the way of recovery, how it can present with symptoms? Anybody else there that would like to share anything, ask any questions before we sign off? I'm heading off to make Anzac biscuits. It's
Mm.
Anzac Day here in Australia. We each year we honour our soldiers that fought in the war with the New Zealanders. That's and ANZAC is the Australia New Zealand Corps that fought together, and we make these ANZAC biscuits because the mothers used to make them, put them in these little tins, and send them off to their sons fighting in the war, a little piece of home. And so every year I make these beautiful Anzac biscuits, and they're delicious, aren't they? Nine in
Beautiful.
Australia.
Mm,
They are yummy. I
gorgeous.
make I make the brown sugar version because
Oh,
my
okay.
husband likes those. They're a bit softer and gooier,
Okay.
and less sugar because the crunchy ones have a lot more sugar in them.
That's when you use the syrup.
Golden syrup,
Yeah.
yes,
You don't
oats,
use that.
lots of butter.
Mm.
Yeah, so I'm off to do that. So any
I've got a
questions?
question.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't overcome when somebody has been particularly awful to me, and then
Yeah.
they come back and want uh, they give you an apology, and they've done it
Mm-hmm.
repeatedly. I've got a weakness of
Ah,
always softening to people. I never want to be mean to anyone,
yeah.
and I can't get that mean feeling in me to say. I always kind of understand them, if you know what I mean, at my own
Mm-hmm.
detriment.
Mm,
So I forgive too easily. That's my problem. I can't hold out and
mm,
say no. So I guess there's something wrong with me. Not wrong, something I haven't correlated in my body.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Well, holding out, because I'm the same. I forgive like that.
Me
Someone
too.
does something, says something, and do you know why I do? Because that's less painful for me.
Yeah, true.
Holding on to it is actually causing me more harm. I
Mm,
realized that quite early. And I see that with my low self esteem husband. He can hold on to a grudge forever.
mm,
Okay. And I see the suffering that that causes him. So
mm.
I don't want to do that. So I forgive really quickly. I move on. So that's a plus for you, right? That's a good thing,
But I,
but there's something else that's bothering you about it. Is it the fact that even though you forgive them, they've apologized, their actions don't change? They still continue to do it,
mm.
right?
And you let
So
them
what
back.
I
You
would,
let them back in because I feel I'm weak. I worry about their feelings of my rejection, and I always worry about the other person. If I reject them, I worry about their emotions.
okay, so what I would do is I would uh, definitely do some work on that, a
Mm,
little bit deeper work. I would write down some memories of those times where they did do something and then they apologized and then you forgave them, but then they did it again and again, right? And what I would do is process those memories, process the emotions in that memory. Now, the good thing about using EAET, emotional expression and awareness therapy, is what it allows you to do is once you release all your emotions, because what you might be doing is when they're apologizing to you, you may be suppressing what you actually want to say to them,
mm,
right? Oh, but you apologize, but you keep doing it again and again and again.
mm,
And that really makes me furious that you're doing that.
mm.
So you may be suppressing that part. So when you use
Don't say anything.
EAET,
Mm. I don't say anything to
which
them.
is suppressing.
Yeah.
So you want
I'm
to
wanting to
go,
keep the family peace all the time. Mm.
yeah. So
And
now
really,
you can use your imagination and process those emotions fully, right? And when you do that, you see a different perspective of that person. Okay.
mm,
And if you use my tool that I add to EAET, which is walk in their shoes, that exercise, that part of it, once you dissipated what it is that you've wanted to say to them and you repressed it, once you release all of that, then what you want to do is imagine looking at them and step on over to them and see it through their eyes. Be them, because you know their story. You know why they probably just keep doing
Yeah.
this
And
thing
that's
and
why
then
I forgive them.
apologizing and doing it again. Once you see it through their eyes, you walk in their shoes, there'll be some deeper understanding of why they're doing what they're doing, and you won't feel so much like a victim of their behavior,
I
right?
know
So
what I
you've
know why
released your own.
I know why they're doing it, because they've been abandoned.
That's it. That's really good. That's good that you know, because then you can really step into their shoes and see what it's like for them,
But they
and you'll gain
continually punish me.
empathy.
They can't continually
So
punish me.
that will stop. Yeah, so that will stop. Once you do that process, you won't feel like you're being punished because you'll see it through a different lens. At the moment, that's the lens that you're seeing it through. They are punishing me, and you have a big story about it, right?
Mm.
So, as Desiree was saying, yes, change the story. And we change the story by changing the memories. And we change the memories by releasing what we suppressed when that happened. What was I suppressing? I couldn't say all these things to that person at the time because they were going through a hard time or whatever the reason was. But you can use your imagination to do all of that. And what happens is it changes a neural pathway in the brain. It shifts that. And then the brain goes, it can turn down the alarm a little bit.
Should
Right.
I
So every
vocalize
time
it?
you interact with this person, the alarm's going off
Because
and
I
you're going to
don't.
have symptoms.
I'm. I've held off ever saying anything and just walking away. And I'm wondering this time,
That's
should I
right.
say something?
No, I wouldn't. I
Okay.
would I would use the imagination and the exercises and
Okay.
process, because do you know what's going to happen? When we say something from a very dysregulated place and holding on to a lot of probably resentment, disappointment, blah, 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 we're going to say something that's going to be hurtful,
Mm.
right?
That's
And
why.
then as people pleasers and gooders, we're not going to like that
No.
because it goes against who we are. We don't
Mm.
want to hurt that person.
No.
So, from my thinking, we're better off to process all the previous stuff. And then when that moment comes, if it happens again, you're going to be much more regulated, and you might be able to say something, but what you say might be much more productive, that it might land better for that person than coming at them with resentment and guilt and whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if we're going to say something to another human being, do we want to really hurt them? No, we don't. Doesn't matter how badly they've treated us, we don't want to hurt them. And we're going to hurt them if we say something from a dysregulated place. We all do. And they do it to us, right? But we have the knowledge, we have the know how, we have the techniques. We can do something about it. They can't. That's how I look at it.
Mm-hmm.
So process it myself. I mean, I face that a lot myself as well. But I go away and I do the work myself, and I see two things happen. One is I come from a different perspective to them next time it happens. Secondly, I feel better myself, right? I feel better in myself, in my body when I do that. And then I don't have to have symptoms. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Thank you for that.
Okay. Let me know how you go with that. If you need any help further, please let me know. So take care, everyone. All the best to you. Have a wonderful time. And I will see you next month.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Lolita.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you.